Okay, so for today, I'm going to go through the Necturus dissection with you guys. So first of all, this is your animal, the Necturus. You have two parts that you need to make sure you pay attention to. First one is your dorsal, which is your back, and then ventral, which is the belly. So whenever you're talking about dorsal and ventral, you know that ventral is the belly, dorsal is the back. Now with this, we're going to first start off by looking at measuring your body length. So whenever you measure your body length, straighten it out as much as possible. Measure from all the way from the very tip of the nose all the way down to the very tip of your tail right here. So whenever you're looking at the anatomy itself, it starts off with your nostrils. The nostrils are going to be on the very tip of the nose. Whenever you're looking at it, you can see where the mouth is at. You have the nostrils right through here. You have your eye, which is right here and right here. Your mouth, which is right here. Your gular fold, which is not going to actually label, but if you look at the ventral side of it, you have this little fold right through here that separates the head from the body. That's what's called the gular fold. You have your gills and then the gill filaments. Now your gills themselves are these parts right through here. These three different sections that I'm holding out. Those are your gills. Bring it up so you guys can see. Okay, so here are your gills. The very end of the gills, these little furry parts, these are your different filaments. Now, if you turn it to where the ventral side is up, you'll see, and I'll focus this again for you. Okay, you will see your two different pairs of limbs. You first have your pectoral limbs, which are the two top arms. And you see they each have 4 different little fingers. You have your pelvic limbs, which are at the very bottom. Again, 4 different toes. Your cloaca, which is going to be this opening right here. And then your tail and your caudal fin. Now there's a difference in the tail and the caudal fin. The tail is this part right here, the thick part. If you feel it, you can tell that the tail is the thicker structure. The caudal fin is the little flimsy flap that's around it. That's like a fin on a fish. So this all right through here is your caudal fin. Now, when you're starting your actual dissection, you are going to start off by creating what would be considered an eye cut. So the cut is going to go down the ventral belly, and you're going to cut across the front 2 pelvic fins and then across underneath the front 2 pectoral fins. can actually cut up into the chest cavity some. In order to do this, the easiest way to begin this cut is to pinch a little bit and you make an incision. It's going to feel a little tough through here, and that's okay. You have to actually get through the muscles first, which is the hardest part. There's a lot of water in them, so don't let that freak you out either. Make very small, very shallow snips like this. And what you'll see is you're actually only cutting the skin. Once you get through the skin, you'll be able to cut a little bit deeper. Again, still be very careful because you don't want to cut open those organs. Always pull up. If you see how I'm pulling, I'm not pulling up now, but I am now. Always pull up when you cut. And you see it's starting to open up the actual abdominal cavity. And keep cutting. You're going to cut up as far close to that gular fold as you can. And if you notice, I'm just making small little snips each time. The closer you get to that gular fold, the shallower your cuts need to be. Now, you're going to start cutting over to the side. You want to open up this abdominal cavity as much as you possibly can. Take your time. Don't rush through it. And now remember, you're going to cut again over underneath the arms. Just like that. So I'm going to turn it around and continue cutting. Again, still making small little snips each time until it is completely open, and then cut the other side as well. You'll notice that there's actually a little membrane holding everything together. Don't let that worry you. You can just cut that membrane if you see it here. It's very thin. We'll talk about what that is in just a minute. Try not to just tear it open, because then you'll start tearing organs. Okay, and now you have it fully opened right here. So first you're going to start identifying different parts. You have to look at the heart. Whenever you do this, that's going to be up here right underneath your gular fold. Be very careful whenever you're trying to get to your heart, because you could puncture it. So you're going to want to cut over. And try to remove this membrane here, along with the muscle. It's going to stay attached, so you're going to have to cut and kind of snip it away some. Okay, and as you see, as you start opening up the cavity, you can actually see the little heart, which is right here. Again, keep snipping away. It's going to get deeper and deeper. Your goal is to try and remove the heart without damaging it. If you need to cut on up into the face, you can. And then once you get through there, that is the heart. Their heart has two atriums, the left and the right. And then the very bottom part right down here is their ventricle. Now, when dissecting the rest of it, whenever you first open up the cavity, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this for ease of access. And notice I'm still using those small little snips. Just so I can completely open up and expose the abdominal cavity. Now, if you notice on your paper, these are not just called the abdominal cavity and chest cavity and things like that. Up here is considered the pericardial cavity, and then all of this right through here is the pleuroperitoneal cavity. So, when you're looking at this, first thing that you're going to come across is your liver. That's this dark structure right here. So this part is your liver. You're going to want to remove the liver. And now whenever you are removing the liver, you're going to use your scalpel and very gently separate it from everything else. Remember, you want to try to separate these with as least damage as possible. You notice it's all connected through this tiny little membrane, almost see-through completely. This is called mesentery. All right, so there's your liver. Now there's something on the bottom side of the liver, and we'll get to that in just a second. So here's my liver. After that, you have your stomach. Your stomach is right here. This is your stomach. And so what you're going to do to get your stomach is you are going to actually use your scissors, hold it up, and you're going to snip right up here if you haven't already removed it from the esophagus. To separate it completely. Again, very gently separate and cut it away from everything else. This dark spot is not part of your stomach, so we're going to separate it as well. Very gently. Now this is your stomach right here. If you want, you may or may not have anything. You can actually cut the scissors down into the stomach and open it up. See if they ate anything. And see, it did. Not sure what that is. Looks like another little fish. And if you look on the inside of the stomach, you have these little ribs right here. These are the muscle linings of the stomach. This is what actually allows the stomach to expand and contract. All right, now if you hold it back the way it was, like right here, you see this J part at the very bottom. That's your duodenum. Where it narrows down, remove that. Where it narrows down, so here's your J, and it gets really narrow right here. That's the bottom of the duodenum, technically the bottom of all of that, the separation between your stomach digestion and your intestinal digestion. So we're going to separate this. Stomach, duodenum. And all of this is the intestines. So for your intestines, we are going to, again, carefully separate them. Don't just jerk them up because you'll end up tearing part of your intestine. But separate that mesentery. Being careful not to break everything apart. Look at how long that is. So what I want you to do now, measure all of this. Still, see, it keeps going. Measure all of this in comparison. Separate it right here. To the length of your mud puppy. All animals are that way. Their intestines can actually stretch the length of their body, if not a little bit longer. So those are your intestines. Okay, now your pancreas. Your pancreas is going to be, if you haven't found it, it's going to be either still attached to your stomach somewhere. It's usually on the underside of the stomach. So my pancreas is actually, and it's hard to kind of tell if you're not sure what you're looking for. You see this white little piece right here that looks like it's real fibrous everywhere? That's your pancreas. So I'm going to snip this away. Right there. Now, on your intestines, if you notice, as it gets lower down, you get darker and darker. And you see how it gets a little thin right through here. If you look further down, where I cut it, and you might need to make another cut as well, where I cut it, and it's getting dark right here, that's your colon. All the way down to this opening, which is your cloaca. Now, with your cloaca will help you identify whether your mud puppy is a male or female. If it is swollen, like right here, you see how it kind of puffs out a little bit? If it's swollen, it's a male. If it's not, and it seems like it's just right there even flat with the rest of the tail and fin, then you have a female. Now, from there, we are going to look at your spleen. Your spleen, again, will be underneath your stomach. It is a darker structure underneath your stomach, so it's right here. This is your spleen. You'll want to remove it. So there's your spleen. Looks like a V, almost. After your spleen, you have your lungs. Now, mud puppies are really unique because they are a middle ground animal between land and water. They have gills and they have lungs, which makes them extremely neat. And so if you look right here, this little red looking structure that's very thin, these are the lungs, one on either side. Again, they're attached by mesentery, so you have to be very careful whenever removing them. Take your scalpel and just cut down to try and separate. Want to begin a cut. Cut across the top if they're not already separated. There's one lung. Two lungs. All right, after your lungs, you have your gallbladder. Your gallbladder is going to be a little air bubble looking, little water bubble looking structure. Right between, it would be your liver and your stomach. This right here is your gallbladder. So you're going to want to remove it very carefully. It is hard to remove, so be very, very gentle with it. You don't want to pop it. If part of the liver comes off with it, that's okay. There. And so there is your gallbladder. Now, with your reproductive organs, so if you look at this one, see how it's puffy? So I said that was a male. Whenever you're looking at your reproductive organs, you will either, if you have a male, you will have testes. If you have a female, you will have ovaries. So since this is a male, these two parts right here are my testes. So I'm going to remove them, again, very gently. They're connected by mesentery and you don't want to damage them. Be very careful whenever you're doing this, just for the sake of not wanting to cut your finger either, because they are rather small. And they are attached very well. There we go. So here's one. Once you get the top part separated, it usually is pretty easy, but it's hard to get that first little top part separated. Two testes. Now, when you're looking underneath all of that, you see all these little squiggly lines right here. I'm going to try to remove some of them. These are your ductus deferens. These are the ones that send the sperm out and down for reproduction. Now, as you get further down, you see how the ductus deferens start to separate around this structure right here? So we're going to want to separate it away. There you go. That's your deferens. And then down here is where your urinary bladder is going to be, right there. And that's it.